Nexus Prime was a bustling hub of activity, where beings from all corners of the galaxy gathered to trade, negotiate, and share stories. Towering spires made of shimmering metals stretched high into the sky, while neon lights in every color imaginable illuminated streets crowded with aliens of every shape and size. Humans were still newcomers here, their presence often overlooked among the more advanced species that dominated interstellar politics. Yet today, humanity found itself at the center of attention, not because of triumph or discovery, but because of a problem no one else wanted to touch. In the Grand Assembly Hall of Nexus Prime, representatives from dozens of factions had convened for an emergency summit. At the heart of the discussion was an artifact unlike anything anyone had ever seen before, a derelict alien starship, discovered drifting near the edge of human-controlled space. Its origins traced back to the Zorathians, an enigmatic race known for their mastery of technology and their strict policy of isolation. For centuries, they had withdrawn from galactic affairs, leaving behind only whispers of their greatness, and now this relic of their past floated silently in the void, abandoned by its creators. The ship, named Erindralis according to fragmented records, was enormous, its sleek crystalline surface glinting faintly even in the dim light of distant stars. Scientists who had studied it remotely described it as both beautiful and terrifying, a blend of organic and mechanical design that defied conventional understanding. But there was a catch. The ship was unstable. Its systems were failing, leaking energy in unpredictable bursts, and some feared that attempting to repair it could trigger catastrophic consequences. No one dared approach it, let alone claim responsibility for fixing it. Amara sat quietly in the back row of the assembly hall, her arms crossed as she listened to the heated debate unfolding around her. She wasn't supposed to be here. Engineers rarely attended diplomatic summits. But when word spread about the mysterious starship, curiosity had gotten the better of her. Now, listening to the arguments, she couldn't help but feel frustrated. Every faction seemed determined to pass the buck, citing risks, costs, or political complications. Some dismissed the ship outright, calling it a hazard unworthy of effort. Others expressed fear, not just of the ship itself, but of angering the Zorathians should they somehow learn what had happened to their vessel. "They're cowards," Amara muttered under her breath, shaking her head. Her voice went unnoticed amid the clamor, drowned out by louder voices and sharper opinions. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something important was slipping through everyone's fingers. This wasn't just a piece of junk floating in space. It was history, innovation, and untold possibilities wrapped up in one fragile package. To abandon it would be a waste, a betrayal not just of the Zorathian legacy, but of everything science stood for. When the moderator finally called for volunteers to take on the mission, silence fell over the room. Representatives exchanged uneasy glances, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. No one spoke. No one moved. The tension grew thicker with each passing second until Amara realized she couldn't stay quiet any longer. "I'll do it," she said, standing abruptly. Her voice rang out clearly, cutting through the awkward quiet like a blade. Heads turned toward her, eyes narrowing in surprise or disbelief. She felt the weight of their stares pressing down on her, but she held her ground, chin raised defiantly. "You?" asked one of the delegates, a tall, insectoid creature with clicking mandibles. "You're human." "Yes," Amara replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. "And I'm an engineer. I've worked on projects half the people in this room couldn't dream of solving. If no one else is willing to step up, then why not me?" Her declaration sparked murmurs throughout the chamber. Some sounded skeptical, others amused. A few whispered warnings about the dangers involved. But Amara tuned them out. She knew the risks, of course she did. But she also knew that opportunities like this didn't come along every day. Fixing the ship wouldn't just be a technical challenge. It could open doors humanity had been trying to unlock for decades. Advanced technology, insights into alien cultures, maybe even a chance to prove themselves worthy allies in the eyes of the reclusive Zorathians. All of it hinged on taking this leap of faith. After several tense moments, the moderator reluctantly accepted her offer. There were conditions, of course. Minimal funding, limited resources, and absolutely no guarantees of success or survival. Amara nodded, unfazed. She'd always thrived under pressure, finding solutions where others saw only obstacles. Besides, deep down, she believed in the value of what she was about to attempt. Someone had to try, and if no one else would, then it might as well be her. As the meeting adjourned, Amara stepped outside into the cool evening air of Nexus Prime. The towering cityscape glittered above her, a reminder of how small humanity still was compared to the vastness of the galaxy. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if she failed? What if the ship really was too dangerous to repair? Shaking off the thought, she reminded herself of why she'd volunteered in the first place. This wasn't just about fixing a broken machine. It was about proving that humans weren't afraid to reach beyond their limits, to embrace challenges that others shied away from. With renewed determination, Amara set off toward the docking bay where her modest cargo vessel awaited. The journey ahead would be long and uncertain, but she was ready. Whatever secrets lay hidden within the Arrus, she intended to uncover them, and perhaps, in doing so, change the course of history forever. Amara Voss stood at the controls of her small cargo vessel, the Iron Wren, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The ship wasn't much to look at. Patched-up panels and scuffed metal made it clear that it had seen better days. But it was reliable, and reliability mattered more than flashiness when venturing into uncharted territory. Ahead of her loomed the coordinates of the asteroid field where the derelict alien starship, Arrus, drifted silently. Her heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation as she plotted the course. The journey itself was quiet, almost unnervingly so. For hours, there was nothing but the hum of the engines and the occasional beep of navigation alerts. Amara used the time to prepare mentally, reviewing schematics and data fragments she'd gathered about the ship. But no amount of preparation could fully ready her for what lay ahead. The reports described Arrus as ancient, its technology far beyond anything humanity had encountered before. It was both an opportunity and a mystery, one that might take weeks, months, or even years to unravel. As the asteroid field came into view, Amara felt a shiver run down her spine. Jagged rocks of varying sizes floated lazily in the void, their surfaces pockmarked by eons of collisions. Nestled among them like a sleeping giant was Arrus. Even from a distance, the ship was breathtaking. Its crystalline exterior shimmered faintly, catching the light of distant stars and reflecting it back in hues of blue and silver. Up close, the scale of the vessel became overwhelming. It dwarfed the Iron Wren, its sleek curves stretching farther than Amara's eyes could follow. She couldn't help but marvel at its design. It looked less like a machine and more like a living organism, frozen in time. Docking proved to be trickier than expected. The ship's systems were offline, meaning there were no automated docking ports or guidance signals to assist her. Instead, Amara had to manually maneuver the Iron Wren into position using magnetic clamps. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she carefully aligned the two vessels, her hand steady despite the tension gripping her chest. Finally, with a soft metallic clang, the connection locked into place. Stepping through the airlock and onto Arrus for the first time was surreal. The interior was unlike anything Amara had ever seen. Strange organic-like structures lined the walls, pulsing faintly with an inner light. Some resembled veins, glowing softly as if carrying energy throughout the ship, while others formed intricate patterns that seemed almost decorative. Gravity fluctuated unpredictably. One moment she felt grounded, and the next, her feet lifted slightly off the floor as though the ship were testing her presence. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional groan of strained metal or the faint hiss of escaping air. Amara activated her portable scanner, its screen lighting up with streams of data as it analyzed the environment. Temperature, radiation levels, structural integrity, all within acceptable limits. though barely. The ship was holding together, but just barely. Every step she took echoed loudly in the vast corridors, making her hyper-aware of how alone she was. Her first task was to locate the central control room, or whatever passed for one aboard a Zorathian vessel. Without power, navigating the labyrinthine halls was slow going. Holographic displays flickered sporadically along the way, showing fragmented images and symbols she didn't recognize. They seemed to tell a story, but without context, it was impossible to decipher. Still, they hinted at a rich history buried beneath layers of decay and neglect. One corridor led to a massive chamber filled with towering spires of crystal, each emitting a faint glow. Amara paused, captivated by their beauty. As she approached, her scanner picked up unusual energy readings emanating from the crystals. Could they be part of the ship's power source? She jotted down notes, reminding herself to investigate further once she had stabilized the core systems. Despite the awe-inspiring surroundings, Amara remained vigilant. She knew the dangers lurking in old ships like this: unstable reactors, malfunctioning defenses, or worse, traps left behind by whoever had sabotaged it. Every shadow seemed to move just out of the corner of her eye. Every sound carried a hint of menace. Yet she pressed on, driven by curiosity and determination. Hours turned into days as Amara explored deeper into the ship. Food rations dwindled, and fatigue began to creep in, but she refused to slow down. Each discovery fueled her resolve. A hidden alcove containing tools unlike any she'd seen before, a mural depicting what appeared to be the Zorathian king surrounded by celestial bodies, a console partially powered by residual energy. Piece by piece, the puzzle of Irindrelis started coming together. On the third day, something unexpected happened. As Amara worked on repairing a damaged conduit, a floating orb of light materialized nearby. At first, she froze, unsure whether it posed a threat. The orb hovered silently, its surface rippling like liquid silver. Slowly, cautiously, it moved closer, circling her as if inspecting her work. When it didn't attack or disrupt her tools, Amara relaxed slightly, watching it with fascination. The orb seemed curious about her, following her movements as she continued her repairs. Over time, it grew bolder, occasionally nudging her hand or hovering near her scanner. It was almost playful. Amara couldn't help but smile. Perhaps not everything aboard Irindrelis was hostile. Maybe some part of the ship still wanted to connect. By the end of the week, Amara had mapped out key areas of the ship and identified several critical systems in need of repair. Though progress was slow, she felt a sense of accomplishment looming within her. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a challenge she was determined to conquer. The isolation, the risks, the sheer enormity of the task. It all faded into the background whenever she reminded herself why she was here. As she settled into a makeshift campsite near the central chamber, Amara gazed up at the shimmering crystals above her. Somewhere within this ancient vessel lay answers. Answers that could change not just her life, but the future of humanity itself. And she intended to find them, no matter what it took. Amara's days aboard Irindrelis settled into a rhythm of discovery and determination. Each morning, she woke to the faint hum of energy coursing through the ship's veins, a reminder that despite its battered state, the vessel was still alive in some way. The glowing orb had become a constant companion, hovering nearby, as if observing her every move. At first, it unnerved her. Its presence felt too intelligent, too deliberate. But over time, she grew accustomed to it. There was something comforting about having even a silent witness to her solitary efforts. As she delved deeper into the ship's systems, Amara began uncovering fragments of its past. In one corridor, she stumbled upon a chamber filled with holographic projectors embedded in the walls. When she activated them using her portable scanner, ghostly images flickered to life, depicting scenes from what seemed to be centuries ago. A regal figure stood at the center of most projections, a tall, slender being with shimmering silver skin and piercing blue eyes. He wore elaborate robes adorned with intricate patterns that matched those etched into the ship's walls. This, Amara realized, was the Zorathian king who had once commanded Erindrelis. The holograms told a story of greatness and betrayal. The king had been revered not just for his wisdom, but for his vision of unity among species. Under his leadership, Erindrelis served as both a symbol and an instrument of peace, traveling across galaxies to forge alliances and share knowledge. But not everyone shared his ideals. His closest advisors, envious of his influence and fearful of change, conspired against him. They sabotaged the ship during one of its voyages, leaving it adrift in deep space while spreading lies about its destruction. Stripped of his power and exiled, the king faded into obscurity, and Erindrelis became nothing more than a forgotten relic. Amara couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow as the final projection faded. The betrayal weighed heavily on her mind, not just because of the injustice done to the king, but because of how familiar it felt. Throughout history, humanity had faced similar struggles. Leaders cast aside, dreams crushed underfoot by those unwilling to embrace progress. She resolved then and there to restore the ship, not just as a technical feat, but as a way to honor the legacy of the man who had dared to dream bigger than his peers. Her work took on new urgency after the discovery. Every repair she made felt like a step toward redemption, for the ship, for the king, and perhaps even for herself. Yet the challenges were far from over. Automated defenses still lurked within the corridors, triggered by movements or attempts to access restricted areas. These systems weren't merely obstacles. They were trials designed to test intruders' worthiness. Amara quickly learned that brute force wouldn't get her far here. Patience, ingenuity, and respect for the ship's mechanisms were key. One such trial occurred when she entered a dimly lit chamber filled with floating platforms suspended above a chasm. As soon as she stepped inside, the doors sealed shut behind her, and the platforms began shifting unpredictably. Holographic symbols appeared in the air, forming complex puzzles that required quick thinking and precise timing to solve. Mistakes resulted in bursts of energy that sent shockwaves rippling through the room, forcing her to retreat and rethink her approach. At first, frustration threatened to overwhelm her. The puzzles were unlike anything she'd encountered before, their logic rooted in Zorathian culture rather than human reasoning. But the glowing orb proved unexpectedly helpful. It hovered near certain symbols, pulsing brighter when she was close to solving a sequence. Whether it was guiding her intentionally or simply reacting to her progress, Amara didn't know. And honestly, she didn't care. With its assistance, she managed to complete the trial, earning a brief moment of respite as the platform stabilized and the doors reopened. Each challenge revealed more about the Zorathians' values. Their reverence for balance and harmony was evident in everything from the design of the puzzles to the layout of the ship itself. Even the organic-like structures lining the walls seemed to embody this philosophy, blending form and function seamlessly. Amara marveled at the sophistication of their engineering, realizing that repairing Erindrelis wasn't just about fixing broken parts, it was about understanding the principles that held it together. Despite the growing sense of connection, the ship remained wary. On several occasions, Amara encountered anomalies that tested her resolve. Once, while working on restoring power to a secondary reactor, she accidentally triggered a containment field that trapped her in place. Panic set in as the barrier tightened around her, threatening to crush her. Just when she thought she might suffocate, the glowing orb intervened, channeling energy into the field until it dissipated. Exhausted but grateful, Amara collapsed to the floor, clutching her chest. The orb hovered closer than ever, its light softening as if offering reassurance. These moments forged an unspoken bond between Amara and the ship, or rather, whatever consciousness governed it. Though she couldn't communicate directly, she sensed that the ship was beginning to trust her. Its defenses became less aggressive, its responses more measured. It no longer treated her as an intruder, but as someone worthy of its secrets. By the end of the week, Amara had pieced together enough information to understand the true nature of the ship's instability. The sabotage hadn't just damaged physical components. It had fractured the neural network linking the ship's core systems. Without a functioning network, Arrus couldn't regulate its own processes, leading to the erratic behavior and energy leaks she'd observed since arriving. Repairing the network would require integrating herself with the ship's consciousness, a daunting prospect, but one she knew she had to attempt. As she prepared for the next phase of her mission, Amara reflected on how much she'd already learned. The Zorathians weren't just engineers. They were philosophers, artists, and explorers. Their vision of unity resonated deeply with her, reminding her why she'd volunteered for this task in the first place. Humanity had so much to gain from reconnecting with lost civilizations, not just technology, but wisdom, compassion, and hope. With renewed purpose, Amara gathered her tools and headed toward the central chamber housing the ship's core. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready to face it. After all, she wasn't just fixing a broken machine. She was unlocking the secrets of a forgotten starship, and maybe, just maybe, finding a piece of herself along the way. The central chamber of Arrus was unlike anything Amara had seen before. It was vast, its ceiling disappearing into shadow, and the walls shimmered with crystalline patterns that pulsed faintly, as though alive. At the heart of the room stood a massive structure, a towering core encased in golden filaments that emitted a soft, warm glow. This was the neural network's nexus, the brain of the ship, but it wasn't just inactive. It felt broken. The golden strands were frayed in places, and dark patches marred what should have been a radiant surface. Amara could almost sense the pain radiating from it, like an injured animal curled up to protect itself. As she approached cautiously, the glowing orb followed closely, its light flickering anxiously. She understood why. The core represented the final hurdle, the most critical repair, but also the greatest risk. To restore the network, she would need to integrate herself directly into the ship's consciousness. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. What if something went wrong? What if the ship rejected her entirely? Yet there was no other way. The Zorathians had designed their technology to bond with those who earned its trust, and after weeks of trials, Amara believed she had done just that. Before beginning the process, she took a moment to study the core more carefully. Her scanner revealed intricate pathways within the structure, each one corresponding to different systems aboard the ship. Some pathways were dim, others completely dark, indicating severed connections. Restoring them wouldn't be as simple as patching wires or welding metal. It required synchronization, aligning her mind with the ship's fragmented consciousness. For someone without experience in biomechanical engineering, this would have been impossible. But Amara wasn't just any engineer. She thrived on challenges, and she trusted her instincts. Taking a deep breath, she placed her hands on the console surrounding the core. Immediately, tendrils of light snaked out from the golden filaments, wrapping around her wrists like delicate vines. They didn't hurt, but they tugged insistently, pulling her closer. Amara hesitated for only a second before stepping forward, allowing the tendrils to guide her fully into the embrace of the core. As she did, a surge of energy coursed through her body, and suddenly, everything changed. Amara found herself standing in a surreal landscape, unlike anything she'd ever imagined. The ground beneath her feet shimmered like liquid glass, and the sky above was filled with swirling constellations that seemed to pulse with life. Towering spires made of crystal stretched endlessly upward, casting prismatic reflections across the horizon. But amidst the beauty lay signs of decay, cracks splitting the ground, shattered fragments of crystal scattered about, and an eerie silence that pressed heavily against her ears. She realized where she was, inside the ship's consciousness. This was how Arrus perceived itself, a living entity connected to the cosmos. And yet, the fractures in its psyche were undeniable. Memories floated around her like ghostly images, flickering in and out of focus. She saw flashes of the Zorathian king walking proudly through gleaming halls, his voice echoing with words of hope and unity. Then came darker visions, shadows creeping through corridors, explosions rocking the ship, and finally, abandonment. The betrayal had left deep scars, not just in the physical structure of the vessel, but in its very soul. A voice broke through the silence, not spoken aloud, but resonating directly in her mind. "Why are you here?" it asked, low and wary, tinged with both curiosity and suspicion. Amara froze, unsure how to respond. She hadn't expected communication so soon, or at all. Gathering her thoughts, she replied silently, projecting her intent as clearly as she could. "I'm here to help, to fix what was broken." The voice paused, considering. "You are human," it said, almost accusingly. "Humans do not understand us." "I may not understand everything," Amara admitted, "but I see value in what you are. You're not just a machine. You're a bridge between worlds. If I can help you heal, maybe you can teach us to be better." For a long moment, there was no response. Then the landscape shifted subtly. The cracks in the ground began to mend, and the swirling constellations brightened. Amara felt a wave of acceptance wash over her, though it was tentative, cautious. The ship wasn't ready to fully trust her yet, but it was willing to let her try. The next few hours, or perhaps days, time seemed irrelevant here, were grueling. Amara worked tirelessly to repair the fractured pathways, navigating the labyrinthine network of the ship's consciousness. Each step brought new challenges. Some memories resisted her touch, recoiling violently, as if protecting themselves. Others welcomed her intervention, guiding her toward solutions she might never have discovered on her own. Throughout it all, the glowing orb remained by her side, its light growing brighter whenever she neared success. One particularly difficult task involved reconnecting a cluster of pathways linked to the ship's defensive systems. These had been among the most damaged, likely due to the sabotage. When Amara attempted to restore them, the landscape reacted violently. Shadows surged toward her, forming menacing shapes that loomed overhead. Voices whispered harshly in languages she couldn't understand, warning her to leave. Fear clawed at her chest, but she refused to back down. Instead, she focused on the orb, which pulsed steadily beside her, offering reassurance. Slowly, she managed to calm the turbulence, piecing the pathways back together until the shadows receded. By the time she finished, exhaustion weighed heavily on her. Yet, as she stepped back into the physical world, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The core's golden filaments now glowed steadily, and the dark patches had vanished. The ship's energy hummed with renewed vitality, filling the chamber with warmth. Even the orb seemed livelier, its light dancing playfully around her. Amara knew the work wasn't over. While the neural network was stable again, many secondary systems still needed attention, but she had passed the ultimate test. Arrus had accepted her, trusting her to continue the repairs. More importantly, she had gained insight into the Zorathians' philosophy, a belief in balance, harmony, and the interconnectedness of all things. These lessons weren't just technical knowledge. They were guiding principles that could shape humanity's future interactions with alien civilizations. As she sat down to rest, leaning against the cool metal wall, Amara allowed herself a rare smile. She had come to Nexus Prime as an outsider, underestimated and overlooked. Now she stood on the brink of something extraordinary. Whatever came next, she was ready. Amara's work on Arrus had reached a critical juncture. The neural network was stable, and the ship's core hummed with renewed energy, but the final step loomed ahead of her, awakening the consciousness of the vessel itself. This wasn't just about flipping a switch or rebooting the system. It was about breathing life back into something that had been dormant for centuries. She knew this moment would define everything she'd worked toward. If she succeeded, Arrus would rise again, not as a mere machine, but as a living entity capable of thought, emotion, and purpose. The central chamber felt different now. The golden filaments of the core pulsed rhythmically, their light casting intricate patterns across the walls. The glowing orb hovered nearby, its presence steadier than ever before, as if it too understood the gravity of what was about to happen. Amara took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed them on the console once more, feeling the familiar tendrils of light wrap around her wrists. This time, however, they were warm and inviting, pulling her gently rather than insistently. As the connection deepened, Amara found herself standing once again in the surreal landscape of the ship's consciousness, but it was transformed. Gone were the cracks and shadows that had marred the environment during her earlier visits. In their place stood a vibrant world, alive with color and movement. The crystalline spires gleamed brightly, and the constellations above danced like living fireflies. Even the ground beneath her feet shimmered with an almost liquid quality, rippling softly as she moved. It was as though the ship's soul had begun to heal, its fractured psyche knitting itself together under her care. A voice echoed through the space, deeper and richer than before. "You have done well," it said, resonating not just in her ears, but in her very bones. "But there is one final trial." Amara nodded, her heart pounding. She had expected this. Every challenge aboard Erendralis had tested her resolve, her ingenuity, and her ability to adapt. This last hurdle would be no different. "What must I do?" she asked silently, projecting her thoughts into the shared mental space. The voice responded, "To awaken me fully, you must confront my past, the betrayal that broke me. Only then can I move forward." Before she could respond, the landscape shifted dramatically. The vibrant colors faded, replaced by a cold, desolate expanse. Amara found herself standing in a dimly lit corridor of the ship, but it wasn't the same as the one she had explored physically. This version was darker, heavier, filled with echoes of pain and anger. Shadows moved along the edges of her vision, whispering fragments of memories. She saw flashes of the Zorethian king walking proudly through these halls, his presence commanding respect and admiration. But soon, those images gave way to scenes of treachery, his advisors plotting in secret chambers, sabotage occurring in hidden compartments, and finally, the king being cast out, his face etched with sorrow and disbelief. Amara felt the weight of the betrayal pressing down on her, not just as an observer, but as someone connected to the ship's emotions. The pain was raw, overwhelming, and it threatened to consume her. For a moment, she doubted whether she could endure it. How could anyone bear such anguish without breaking? But then she remembered why she was here. She wasn't just fixing a broken machine. She was helping a wounded soul find peace. Drawing strength from that realization, Amara stepped forward, confronting the swirling darkness head-on. As she did, the glowing orb appeared beside her, its light cutting through the gloom. Together, they navigated the haunted corridors, piecing together fragments of memory until the truth became clear. The betrayal hadn't been random or senseless. It had stemmed from fear. The Zorethians who conspired against their king were terrified of change, unwilling to embrace the unity he envisioned. Their actions weren't born of malice, but of ignorance, a failure to see beyond their own insecurities. Understanding this, Amara felt a surge of compassion for the king, for the conspirators, and even for the ship itself. Betrayal was painful, but forgiveness was possible. With that thought, the landscape began to shift once more. The shadows dissipated, replaced by warmth and light. The Zorethian king reappeared, his form now translucent and ethereal. He looked at Amara with gratitude in his eyes, bowing slightly before fading away. The ship's voice returned, softer this time, filled with relief and hope. "Thank you," it said simply. "You have given me closure." When Amara opened her eyes, she was back in the physical world. The central chamber glowed brilliantly, its golden filaments radiating a steady, comforting light. The orb floated close to her, pulsing warmly as if sharing in the joy of the moment. Tears welled up in Amara's eyes as she realized what she had accomplished. Erendralis was alive again, its consciousness whole and healed. Over the next few days, the ship underwent rapid changes. Systems that had been offline for centuries came back online. humming with efficiency. Gravity stabilized, corridors lit up with soft illumination, and holographic displays sprang to life, offering insights into the ship's capabilities. Amara spent hours exploring newly accessible areas, marveling at the advanced technology and the beauty of the Zorathian design. She also discovered something unexpected, a repository of knowledge stored within the ship's neural network. It contained information on science, medicine, engineering, and even philosophy, representing centuries of accumulated wisdom. But the most profound revelation came when the glowing orb transformed into a holographic projection resembling the Zorathian king himself. His expression was serene, his voice calm yet powerful. "You have proven yourself worthy," he said, addressing Amara directly. "In restoring Irindralis, you have honored not only my legacy, but the values I sought to uphold. For this you shall be rewarded." Amara listened intently as the king explained the nature of the reward. Access to the ship's vast repository of knowledge was hers to use as she saw fit, but there was a condition. To ensure the knowledge was used wisely, she would need to remain aboard Irindralis as its guardian and ambassador. Leaving meant severing the connection forever, taking nothing but memories. The choice was hers to make. Standing there, surrounded by the hum of the awakened ship, Amara felt a mix of awe and responsibility. This wasn't just a gift, it was a calling. Whatever decision she made, she knew her life, and perhaps the future of humanity, would never be the same. Amara stood frozen in the central chamber of Irindralis, her mind racing as the weight of the decision settled over her. The glowing orb, now transformed into the holographic likeness of the Zorathian king, hovered patiently before her, its translucent form exuding an aura of calm authority. His words echoed in her thoughts. "To ensure the knowledge is used wisely, you must remain aboard Irindralis as its guardian and ambassador." It was a choice that felt both impossibly simple and overwhelmingly complex. On one hand, returning home meant leaving behind not just the ship, but also the chance to unlock humanity's potential through the vast repository of Zorathian knowledge. She could imagine the debates, the politics, the inevitable squabbles over how such power should be wielded. Would Earth even be ready for it? Or would this gift become a curse, misused by those who sought only control or profit? On the other hand, staying aboard Irindralis meant cutting ties with everything she had ever known. Her family, her friends, the small cargo vessel, the iron wren that had carried her across light years of space. It meant embracing a life of solitude, traveling among the stars as the caretaker of a sentient starship. Yet, wasn't that what she had always dreamed of? To explore the unknown, to push boundaries, to make a difference beyond the confines of human society. As she wrestled with these thoughts, the ship itself seemed to respond. The golden filaments of the core pulsed gently, their light casting soft waves across the chamber. The air hummed with energy, almost as if Irindralis were waiting for her answer, trusting her to choose wisely. Finally, Amara took a deep breath and looked up at the holographic king. "I'll stay," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "If this knowledge can help humanity grow, if it can teach us to be better, I want to be the one to guide it." The king's expression softened, his eyes reflecting gratitude. "Your courage will not go unrewarded," he replied. "You have earned not just our trust, but our eternal respect." With that, the hologram faded, leaving Amara alone once more with the ship. The days that followed were transformative. Irindralis began revealing more of itself to her, sharing insights into its systems, its history, and its purpose. Amara learned that the ship was far more than a relic. It was a living archive, designed to preserve the wisdom of countless civilizations. Its creators had envisioned it as a beacon of unity, traveling between worlds to foster understanding and cooperation. But after the betrayal, it had drifted silently through space, waiting for someone like Amara to awaken its true potential. One of the first things she discovered was the ship's ability to adapt to its pilot's needs. The organic-like structures lining the walls shifted subtly, creating new rooms and corridors tailored to her preferences. A cozy nook appeared near the central chamber, complete with a comfortable chair and a viewport overlooking the stars, a perfect spot for reflection. Another area transformed into a workshop stocked with advanced tools, enabling her to continue tinkering and learning. But the most profound change came when Amara accessed the repository of knowledge for the first time. Holographic displays filled the air around her, each one containing information so intricate and advanced that it left her breathless. There were designs for sustainable energy sources, cures for diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries, and blueprints for technologies that defied imagination. Yet, amidst all the brilliance, there was a recurring theme: balance. The Zorathians believed deeply in harmony, not just within themselves but with the universe they inhabited. Every piece of knowledge emphasized coexistence, sustainability, and respect for the interconnectedness of all life. Amara spent hours immersed in the data, absorbing as much as she could. She knew she couldn't master it all overnight, nor did she need to. Her role wasn't to hoard the knowledge, but to share it responsibly. Still, the sheer scope of what lay before her was daunting. How could she possibly decide where to begin? The answer came unexpectedly, during a quiet moment in the observation nook. As she gazed out at the endless expanse of stars, a thought struck her. Start small. Instead of trying to revolutionize entire planets at once, focus on individual acts of kindness, collaboration, and education. Erendralis wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol. By traveling from world to world, helping those in need and fostering alliances, she could inspire others to embrace the same values that guided the Zorathians. With renewed clarity, Amara set about preparing for her first mission as the ship's guardian. She chose a nearby system where tensions between two factions had escalated dangerously. Diplomatic efforts had failed, and violence threatened to erupt. Though hesitant at first, the leaders agreed to meet aboard Erendralis, intrigued by rumors of the mysterious human engineer who had revived a lost starship. When the delegates arrived, they were awestruck by the vessel's beauty and sophistication. Amara welcomed them warmly, guiding them to a conference room where holographic displays showcased solutions to their shared problems. Clean water technology, agricultural advancements, and conflict resolution strategies based on Zorathian principles. At first, skepticism lingered, but as discussions unfolded, hope began to take root. By the end of the summit, the factions had agreed to a tentative peace, inspired by the possibilities Erendralis represented. Word of the success spread quickly. News of the starship traveled across the galaxy, sparking curiosity and admiration. Some saw it as a miracle worker, others as a harbinger of change. Regardless of interpretation, everyone agreed on one thing: something extraordinary was happening, and Amara Voss was at the center of it. Though she still missed Earth sometimes, the familiar faces, the comforting routines, Amara never doubted her decision. Each day aboard Erendralis brought new challenges, new discoveries, and new opportunities to make a difference. She had found her purpose not as a lone engineer repairing a broken machine, but as a bridge between worlds, carrying forward the legacy of a forgotten king and his visionary people. As the ship prepared to leave orbit and journey onward, Amara stood in the central chamber, watching the golden filaments pulse rhythmically. The glowing orb floated beside her, its light warm and steady. Together, they were ready for whatever lay ahead, a partnership forged in trust, resilience, and hope. And so, under the watchful gaze of the stars, Erendralis sailed into the unknown, its human guardian at the helm, determined to shape a brighter future for all who called the galaxy home. Months turned into years as Erendralis and Amara traveled across the galaxy, leaving ripples of change in their wake. Each mission was different. Some involved mediating conflicts, others focused on sharing knowledge or aiding struggling civilizations, but all shared a common thread: hope. The ship had become more than just a vessel. It was a symbol of unity, resilience, and progress. And Amara, once an overlooked engineer from Earth, had transformed into something greater: a guardian of wisdom, a bridge between species, and a beacon of possibility. The journey wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt, times when Amara questioned whether she was truly making a difference. Some factions resisted her efforts, clinging to old prejudices or fearing the unknown. Others tried to exploit the ship's technology for personal gain, forcing Amara to navigate treacherous negotiations while relying on Irindralis' defenses to protect its secrets. Yet through every challenge, the bond between pilot and ship only grew stronger. Together, they learned to adapt, to persevere, and to inspire. One particularly memorable mission took them to a remote colony on the edge of a dying star system. The settlers were struggling to survive, their resources dwindling and their morale shattered. When Irindralis arrived, glowing softly against the backdrop of a crimson sky, many dismissed it as a mirage, too beautiful to be real. But Amara stepped off the ship with a calm confidence, offering not promises but solutions. Using the Zorathian knowledge stored within the repository, she helped the settlers construct sustainable energy grids, purify toxic soil, and establish trade routes with neighboring systems. By the time they departed, the colony was thriving again, its people filled with renewed optimism. Stories like this spread far and wide, carried by traders, explorers, and diplomats who encountered Amara and her starship along their travels. Tales of the mysterious human engineer and the sentient alien vessel became legends, passed down through generations. Some claimed Irindralis could heal entire planets. Others said it appeared at pivotal moments in history, guiding lost souls toward brighter futures. While the details varied, one thing remained consistent. Wherever Irindralis went, lives were changed. Back on Earth, whispers of Amara's exploits reached those who had doubted her years ago. News outlets ran features about the woman who dared to defy convention, venturing into the unknown and achieving what no one thought possible. Scientists debated the implications of the Zorathian technology she wielded, while philosophers pondered the lessons humanity could learn from her actions. Though few knew the full truth of her mission, Amara's name became synonymous with courage, innovation, and selflessness. For Amara herself, however, fame held little appeal. She rarely thought about Earth anymore, except during quiet moments when nostalgia crept in. Instead, her focus remained on the present, on the next world that needed help, the next problem to solve, the next opportunity to foster understanding. Her life aboard Irindralis was fulfilling in ways she never imagined. The ship provided everything she needed: companionship in the form of the glowing orb, endless opportunities for discovery, and a sense of purpose that transcended individual desires. Yet there were moments when she allowed herself to dream. What would happen if humanity fully embraced the values she had come to cherish? Balance, harmony, and interconnectedness. Could they one day stand alongside species like the Zorathians, contributing to the collective wisdom of the galaxy? Or would fear and greed continue to hold them back? These questions lingered in her mind, unanswered but ever present. One evening, as Irindralis drifted through a nebula painted in hues of violet and gold, Amara stood in the observation nook, gazing out at the swirling colors. The glowing orb floated beside her, its light reflecting softly off the viewport. "Do you think I made the right choice?" she asked quietly, though she didn't expect an answer. After all, the orb rarely communicated directly. To her surprise, it pulsed brightly, almost as if nodding. Then, for the first time since their bond began, a voice, not the deep resonance of the ship's consciousness, but something softer and more intimate, spoke in her mind. "You have brought balance where there was chaos," it said, "hope where there was despair. That is enough." Tears welled up in Amara's eyes as she absorbed the words. Enough. Perhaps that was all anyone could ask for, to leave the galaxy a little better than they found it. With a smile, she turned away from the viewport and returned to the central chamber, ready to plan their next destination. As the years stretched onward, Irindralis continued its journey, appearing at key moments throughout history. It guided fledgling civilizations through their darkest hours, brokered peace between warring factions, and shared knowledge that sparked revolutions in science and culture. Those who encountered the ship often spoke of the lone human engineer who piloted it, a woman unafraid to reach beyond her limits, to embrace challenges others shied away from. Though her story faded into myth over time, Amara's legacy endured. Generations of explorers looked to the stars, inspired by tales of the forgotten starship and the human who chose to rewrite the future. And somewhere among the constellations, Arrus sailed on, its golden filaments glowing steadily, carrying forward the dreams of a king, the ingenuity of an engineer, and the boundless potential of a united galaxy. In the end, Amara realized that her decision hadn't been about leaving Earth behind. It had been about finding a place where she truly belonged. Aboard Arrus, she had discovered not just a purpose but a family, a home, and a destiny written among the stars.